So this is going to be a little bit different. This is one of the craziest days that I ever had back in high school. So I'm sure in every place there's one town where all the crazies seem to go and gather. Now, we have a place like that called Ashland, and don't get me wrong, Ashland is beautiful. Beautiful sculptures, wonderful artwork, amazing parks. It's the theatrical part of the valley. As much as I love visiting it though, there are some things about Ashland that make it a little strange. For example, my teacher used to tell me this one. I had this teacher that lived in Ashland, and every morning she would get up to go to school, and there was always this guy who laid out on his front yard. He had a big couch out there, and he would lay there naked from 8 o'clock in the morning until around 11 o'clock, and then he'd go back inside. She was always talking about this guy. Well, either way, there's this one day where a university in Ashland had set up this scavenger hunt for all of the local high schools in the area, and we all had to get together, complete this scavenger hunt, and then bring all our answers to this university, and then see who wins the event. So the month before this, we had gotten all of our scavenger hunt done, and it was now time to get to the auditorium so that we could compete against these schools and find out who won. And this day was one of the strangest days that I had ever had. We ran into a swath of issues that we just did not see coming. So initially there was this girl named Athena, which is a super cool name, but she was the one who actually knew where this school was. My buddy Gage had actually come to my house and picked me up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then we went to our high school, and then we met up with all the other kids that were going to be involved in this event. So my friend Erica, that I'd actually been very good friends with since kindergarten, was going to be taking myself, Gage, and a couple other kids over to the auditorium. And then Athena was going to be taking the rest of them in her car. So again, we don't know where to go, so Athena is leading us. But on the way, she stops in to this drive-through coffee shop, and we're sitting there like, dude, what are you doing? Okay, fine, whatever, okay, that makes sense. So we're just sitting there waiting for them to get their coffee, and we're just sitting there chatting with each other when we look up ahead and we realize that Athena's back tire is completely flat. So we called her up and we were like, hey, good thing we're at the 76 right now, because you may want to go over to the air pump and get that sorted. She's like, oh my god, thank you so much for letting me know. So after she gets her coffee, she pulls out to head towards the air pump, and her car dies right then and there. So the guys all jump out of the car and they push her over to the air pump, which at this point I'm sitting there thinking, why? Like, what is that gonna solve, right? It's obviously not the tire is the problem anymore. You got a whole swath of issues going on here. So they finish airing up the tire and they push it into a parking spot, and they tried working on it for a little bit to see if they could get it fixed, but there was just no way to fix this, at least right now. So they go into the shop and they ask the workers that are in there, hey, can you make sure that nobody like starts messing with my car? I have to leave it here and I'm gonna come back tonight and pick it up. And they were like, yeah, that's totally fine. Just make sure to lock your doors. And she goes, well, that's the problem. The locks on my door don't work. None of her locks on her car worked. So she had to leave this thing in the middle of town where anyone could have broken in. And she left some stuff in there that she definitely wouldn't have wanted stolen. So that's why she went and contacted them. So after that, we all pile into Erica's car, and our teacher calls us right at that point. So we get on the phone and we're letting her know what's going on. Apparently she was already at the university and we didn't have a lot of time. So we're like, okay, we're going to get there as soon as possible. So this kid in the back says, hey, I live about 5 minutes away. If you drive to my house, we can pick up my car, and instead of 8 of us being piled into this 5-person car, we can all just go and be a little safer. So Erica drives over there, and we see this dude's car, and it was a lunk. So Athena and 3 other dudes get out of Erica's car, and they run over to this one, and they realize the thing is frozen shut, which was weird because it wasn't even that cold that day. But this thing, you couldn't even open it. Everyone jumps out, and we got our ice scrapers, and we're just going to town on this car, trying to get all the ice off. I go back into Erica's car, and I sit down for a minute, and Erica walks over, and she's like, I can't believe how much ice is on this thing. As she's telling me this, her ice scraper, she's not even moving it, it just explodes. It just falls apart in her hand, and she's sitting there like, what the hell? This is my favorite thing. So she's all upset, and she tells us as she's trying to fix her thing, she's like, there was ice on the outside of the car, but when we opened it up, we had to scrape ice off the inside of the car too. The thing isn't sealed at all. Either way, it didn't matter how big of a piece of junk this car was, we were in a hurry, we needed to go. So Athena jumps in that car and starts it up, and when she does, this huge plume of what looks like comes out of a diesel semi-truck comes out of this car and engulfs it. You actually could not see the car because of how much black smoke came out of this thing. And then Athena just speeds off. Erica was still trying to fix her ice scraper, so she passes it over to me and I'm trying to fix it, and she just starts taking off. We hit a lot of red lights and Athena didn't, so she was on the freeway and just out of there. So we finally get on the freeway and we're going pretty fast, but we could not seem to catch up to this ball of smoke that was blitzing down the freeway. So I call up Athena and I'm like, hey, you're the only one who knows where this place is. You gotta slow down for us, you know? We don't know where to go. And she's like, dude, I'm doing 100. And I'm like, what the hell? What are you doing 100 for? She's like, oh, also, there's something that I forgot. I left my license in my car back at the 76. And I'm like, you're doing 100 miles an hour in this piece of junk and you don't have your license on you? Okay, hang on. Athena, can you please just cruise for a little bit so we can catch up? And she's like, yeah, no worries. So we finally get up to her. And as I'm looking at this car, I realized that she didn't shut her door all the way. It wasn't wide open or anything, but there was a crack. So if she had driven this pile of crap at 100 miles an hour and she hits something, she's gonna fly out that window. Because if the seatbelts were anything like what the rest of this car looked like, dude, they were not gonna save her. This is where we get to the part of the story where I saw one of the strangest things that I'd ever seen in Ashland. Now, at this point in my life, I had been to Ashland a couple times and I heard some rumors about it, but I had never really seen anything strange. And I never had a lot of judgment for that place because I thought it was really cool. I still to this day think it's one of the most beautiful places to go in our valley. It really is. But there we are, we have to stop at a red light, and that is when I see her. This old lady, probably in her 90s, walking across the street at 8 o'clock in the morning, mind you, wearing nothing but a very thin blouse. This blouse was so thin you could unfortunately see right through it. She had a straw hat on, which you could tell was sun bleached to the point that it used to be pink, but it wasn't anymore. She had this matted, damaged hair, and there were a bunch of beads randomly strewn throughout her hair. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, Barry, come on, don't be mean. You know, what are you gonna be mean to this probably crazy old lady? Now look, firstly, I'm not trying to be mean here, I'm just trying to describe what she looked like. And secondly, not probably crazy, she was definitely crazy, and there's a reason that I know that. This lady was old enough that she should have been using a walker or a cane or something to help her across the street, but instead, she was using a pool noodle. And this pool noodle is bending every which way as she's walking across the street. It's not gonna support her at all. Not only that, but this pool noodle around the top of it had strands of her hair and beads wrapped around the top. It was like a ceremonial stick that you see a shaman use, except it was a foam pool noodle. Now you're probably sitting there thinking like, wow, you guys didn't even stop and offer her a ride. And here's the thing on that. She was going the opposite direction from where we were going to be turning, so it wouldn't have helped anyway. And secondly, if I offered rides to every person that I thought was possibly insane in Ashland, I wouldn't have room in my car. Also, when it comes to hitchhikers, you never really know who you're picking up, so maybe it's pretty reasonable to not pick up people who have the telltale signs of not being all there. Not like she could have done anything anyway. I mean, she was 90 years old and she definitely didn't have a weapon on her. You may ask, well, Barry, how'd you know she didn't have a weapon on her? Trust me, see-through blouse, don't want to talk about it. Either way, we finally get to the university. We're about 8 minutes late, but it didn't seem to matter, and our school actually won the event. I kept telling everybody we had to go through all that crap just so we could get enough karma so that it made sense for us to win. This was one of the most unlucky and strangest days that I'd ever had back in high school. I guess the moral of the story is no matter how hard things get, with enough determination, things can work out. I'm just glad that old rusty car made it that far. A beat up old pile of junk just blowing smoke? Actually, that might be a good description of this YouTube channel.